So despite Dave not being here, women or Team Canada did not win more gold medals than the U.S. in the Olympics.
Shocker.
I know last episode we're
I'm
like,
so
hey,
surprised.
It's going to be 3 of us if Canada wins more. Dave's quitting. Dave didn't quit. He's just covering CSU soccer today. And CSU just opened I did a grand opening ceremony for their CSU soccer field.
Yeah, brand new.
Brand spanking new. So
Brand spanking new.
That's where Dave is today. Canada didn't win more gold medals, but we have some more Olympic coverage coming later in today's episode. First, though, let's take it local. We have the PD Jamboree for high school football coming up, as well as the CMB Kickoff Classic for more of the Grand Strand teams. Tegan, you're heading out to the PD. I guess that's in is it in Florence?
No, it's in Dillon.
Dillon. Right, you just told me that.
It is the Dillon Jamboree, but that's okay. Heading out to Dillon. We've got 10 teams, I believe, so 5 matchups. West Florence, you've got Richmond, which is out of North Carolina, Chesterfield, Lakeview, Darlington, Latta, Hartsville, Scotland County, Chirac, and Dillon. Lots of schools. I'm excited for this. This was my first introduction to high school football in the South last year, so it'll be nice to go out there. I'm sure the kids are all really excited to get back out on the field again. Yeah, and Dave is going to be more local. He'll be in Conway at CCU, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep.
And he'll be covering the CMB Kickoff Classic, where you'll see more teams like Myrtle Beach and North Myrtle Beach and Conway and
all the Horry County
schools. Just pick a school. They're there.
It'll be there. Yeah, exactly. So it's crazy to think that we're here at high school football, that it's actually happening. I don't think my mind is fully absorbed that Fridays are officially football days now, but they are. And pretty soon Saturdays will be too, and Sundays. It's all coming together.
It's sports weekend coming up soon.
So much sports.
With you heading to Dillon, my big question is the band going to be there? Because Ian might be interested in coming along.
So last year when I was at this, there were, I want to say, only 3 or 4 of the schools brought their bands. And again, there are 10 schools, and I think only 2 of the teams brought their cheerleaders. Dillon had all of their people there because obviously they're right there. So they had their cheerleaders, they had their band. But yeah, I'm curious how many will bring them this year. I really think it helps with the game day atmosphere. I mean, there were a ton of people last year who went there to watch, honestly, most of the matchups. They didn't just stay for their kids' team or for the hometown team or for whatever. They were all there to watch all the games.
I mean, it's a good way to spend a Friday night. How else are you going to spend it?
Yeah, the bands are fun to listen to and go out there, and they're putting in the work usually in the off season just as much as the football team. So I know when I was in high school, we were out there bright and early, mid-July, doing all the fun band camp stuff. And then
I'm sorry,
wait,
band camp? You were in band?
Yeah.
When you said that Ian was excited, I thought that you meant because he was in band, but I wasn't sure.
No, I was mentioning episode 1 where he's like episode 2 when he's like Dillon's band is really good, and then he went boom, 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 boom,
yes.
boom, boom. I'm like, we're getting copyrighted for that.
No, they just have fun songs. I mean, like I said, all the bands usually have their go-to songs. A lot of Ohio bands, the fight song is typically, whatever college. So a lot of people, they play the Ohio State fight song. But here you have different choices. You can go Clemson, you can go, USC. A lot of them, some even write their own fight songs, and they have different chants, and it's just fun. It's a fun atmosphere. Each atmosphere is a little different, but yeah, Dillon's one of those where you go once, you go twice, you start picking up on the songs that they play and all the different chants and stuff like that. So this is much fun.
Yeah, that's how, honestly, I feel that way about Dillon. I feel that way about Soxty too. They have a huge band, because when I was at the Battle of 707 last year, I think their band took up half of the stands. The student section was smaller than the band, and that student section was huge.
Yeah, and the bands are fun. They compete. One of our coworkers, George, his daughter, is in the band at St. James, and they compete all across, even throughout the season. He's always telling me about different band competitions and stuff. So, and they have to do it twice. So it's the football team. Yeah, they just got to do their thing on Friday. Sometimes they'll be at the game on Friday, and they're at a band competition on Saturday. So
I've always heard that
they're far.
When they they are. But I've always heard that they do the Friday performances at football games. It's like a warm up before those competitions. And honestly, that is, and I'll die on this hill, that is a sport in itself. If you are going somewhere to compete, similar to, I mean, cheerleading, yes, cheerleading is considered a sport. I don't think anyone else would debate that otherwise. But like, if you're going to these competitions and some of those kids have like instruments that are twice their size.
Yeah, the huge drums and the tubas, and
can you imagine like just like the thighs that you would get from holding this big drum, and you're like a marching band if you're thinking about that too, and you're like moving. Oh my gosh, nah, that's a sport. But yeah, we always joke around that George's daughter is our little bureau girl out in St. James. She tells us, or they get like, because George is usually there, and so he gets to get that really good video. And if anyone has ever run into or met George, he is an amazing videographer. That he is just
award-winning. Many times.
Many multi-award-winning.
And all of the stuff.
Yes, so we're always really blessed when we get that stuff from George. But that is, so you got football, you got bands, you got something to do on a Friday night, and it's also just kind of like the tip-off of, is it almost fall? Are we almost out of the humidity
We're almost
season?
there. It's been so nice the past few days. It's perfect golf weather, and I just don't want the humidity.
Yeah, so, but I mean, that's obviously something that we look forward to, and other things we look forward to is as soon as week 0 hits, which again throws me off that we call it week 0.
Yeah, why do we do that? Does anybody know? Ian?
I think there's some teams that don't play on week 0, and so I think that may have been the original thought of it was, but yeah, it always throws me off as well, especially when you're anchoring or hosting a sports show and you gotta call it week 0. It's, you know.
It makes it seem like it doesn't count, even though that week literally does count toward all their records and things.
Yeah, I don't know if it has to do with whether, you know, some schools are in session yet or,
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so I don't know if, who knows, may have been just some kind of urban legend years ago where he's just
Somebody's
start
like,
with 0.
0.
So,
hey, you know, if anyone knows, just let us know and we'll talk about it next episode. But with week 0 comes Extra Point. Anyone who's not familiar with Extra Point, it's our high school football show, our sports show, runs every Friday, the second half of our 11 p.m. show. And 11:15, is that, I think, the start time of it. And we have 2 of the hosts. Dave hosts as well. He's usually the main host. We'll sit on the Extra Point set. But we have Ian, who we talked about in episode 1, who was an amazing fill-in for Extra Point.
Quarterback.
Yeah, the 3rd string quarterback last year. And then Tegan, you're usually out for the game of the day or game of the week.
Yeah, usually I'm out in the field, but sometimes if the game is close enough, which most of the time it's not, because most of the time I'm in the PD, but I'll come back to studio and I'll co-anchor with Dave and toss all those different highlights. But honestly, I love being out in the field at the game of the week. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, you also, like, because sometimes you guys switch places too, like you'll do a game of the week. I've seen if you're in the studio with Dave's gone or whatever.
Usually when I'm like gone on a lovely vacation or something like that.
Vacation during football season? Oh, unheard of.
Who would do that? That's crazy.
But yeah, you guys are really the faces of Extra Point. What are your favorite things about that time? I guess, what is it, 15 weeks?
15 regular weeks, I think, and then you've got playoffs. And they all just blend together.
They
honestly,
really do.
Once we hit like week 7, I'll be there and I'm like, welcome to week 8, 9?
8 plus 0.
Yeah,
9.
8 plus 0. You know what? That's math. Ian, you go first. What's your favorite part?
I like the pizza we get to eat.
That is
you
true.
go out and you
valid.
shoot your game, and then you come back, and we usually have pizza or wings or something like that. And that's, I mean, I've been shooting high school football since college, so that was always a thing. You'd come back, there'd always be something in the newsroom. You'd talk to other people about how was your game. You'd show everyone your highlights, things like that. It's fun, you know. Then there's always that rush towards the end of trying to get, you know, all the highlights in, trying to get all the scripts in, trying to get the scores in. So it's definitely, you know, frantic in that final, you know, 10 minutes before you're on air. And it's like week after week, you're like, this show is not going to look good. This show is going to be just a hot mess. And it always ends up,
TV
you know,
magic.
somehow looking good.
And
So,
that's a true testament to like the team effort, because it takes a village.
Yeah.
We have people from our sales team. We have people who, like me, like sit at the desk when we're here, and they go out and they shoot football, even if they never had the experience. I know that we had a few new shooters last year, and it was great. I mean, they get the content, they go out there and they get that stuff for us, so we can represent all those schools when we don't normally get the chance to do that, for other sports especially. But this is your time, this is your moment. Ian, when we get pizza, what pizza are you getting? This is your chance. If news director's watching, maybe he slides in a little bit of a tip. I know you do not like Domino's.
I don't not like Domino's. Domino's was like there, and then they disappeared for a little bit. They kind of did like a revamp and came back. They're decent. I enjoy Pizza Hut a lot. You know, you can't go wrong with the Hut.
Crust?
The stuffed crust was always a good choice. Unpopular opinion, maybe Hungry Howie's. We had that. That was like
Never heard of it.
that was
I've
like
heard
the
of it, never had
go-to in college for a lot of us. I was an RA, and one of the things you could order was a sheet pizza, which I swear was like half the size of this table. So if you would host like an event, I would just order 3 sheet pizzas, go sit them in the, lounge, and I would have the most people come to my RA events, and everyone who they're doing balloons and decorations, like, how come everyone doesn't come to my events? I'm like, all these kids want in college is free food and television.
100% free food.
Yep.
So yeah, Hungry Howie's, we have a few down here, but they're not very popular. I'd say probably Pizza Hut. Don't mess with the Hut. It's been around for years, and
That's a slogan, isn't it? Or like is it don't mess with the
You
Hut?
can't out pizza the
can't
Hut?
You can't
Yeah.
out pizza the Hut. That's what it is.
But if we're gonna go, like, if
That came from the deep
Thank you.
subconscious.
You're like, I know this.
I know we have a very strict pizza budget.
Yes.
But like, if we actually could go above and beyond and like really splurge locally, I love Tofino's.
I love
Tofino's is really good out at the
Tofino's.
Market Common.
Oh, okay, yes, I know what you're talking about.
Gino's, one of our directors, Scott, has connections to Gino's. That's always been really good pizza.
As an Italian New Yorker, I feel like that's a given.
Yeah, I mean,
Italian.
there's some good. You can't really mess up pizza, and there's quite a few good places around Myrtle Beach, but half the time it's between Domino's or, Pizza Hut. And when we were getting Pizza Hut and the stuffed crust, you felt like this is going to be a good week.
See, and
Domino's, you just felt off.
No.
No knock to Domino's. No offense, but
And
something just was off.
Right
No.
now.
I'm the opposite, because I would not eat the Pizza Hut pizza because it was always stuffed crust, and I didn't like how much cheese there was. And so then if you saw my plate, I would just open the crust, take out the big mozzarella stick.
Which is, I feel like it's a sin. My wife pulls out the stuffed crust. I'm like, how? Like when I was in
Megan,
high
I'm
school.
on your team. I agree with you.
When we were in high school and you had stuffed crust pizza, I mean, kids
No.
were trading that stuff on the playground because the
What?
stuffed crust pizza.
You had a very different plate.
This was
Yeah.
like, people would save the crust because it was so good, and like some people were like, oh, I can get 3 crusts, I can get 2 more chocolate milks. Of course, I was always after the stuffed crust. Like,
You were
screw
a-
the chocolate milk that one day a week.
See, I'm always the kid and just still the person. I don't eat the crust of pizza. I don't.
That's a cardinal
I'm
sin.
sorry.
Sheesh.
I feed it to the dog. The pupper deserves it. I mean,
It's
don't get
going
me
to a
wrong,
good
food
cause.
for a dog, ridiculous. What?
At least it's going to a good
Yeah.
cause. I can
Exactly.
get
I'm not
behind that.
throwing it away. Like
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But like the crust, like you take a piece of pizza out. This is a sports podcast. You take a piece of pizza out.
Dave would be so mad right now. He's like, we're not even talking sports. Who cares?
Okay, this is the last piece. Or the last piece. Huh?
Last piece.
You take one bite of the crust as soon as you take that pizza, and then you eat the pizza.
But then it's got like.
well, it's not like it's the integral piece. You're taking the corner piece. Anyways.
Anyways,
If you would
I-
like to sponsor us
Yeah.
during the Extra Point Week and you think that you have the best pizza out there,
we'll do a pizza tasting.
give us a try.
on
Drop
our
off.
podcast.
I'd say we need at least 3 large pizzas
Yeah.
to feed our staff, and we will give you a review on the Extra Point.
On Extra Point.
And we'll
or-
even give you a
or on-
shout
we'll
out
give you
on
a
our
shout out here.
podcast.
When we decide which one is
That's
the best.
and even the PD. If you got the best pizza in the PD or Grand Strand, hit us up Friday
Facts.
nights.
Or the
We'd
Low
like to be
Country.
around probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock. If
Yeah.
you could have it here, that'd be great.
I always felt bad for you guys too, because the people. So if anyone doesn't know, like Ian said, we do everything. Like, so we have a producer producing the show. We have people out all over the place getting the content for each game.
And sometimes they go to multiple games.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean,
Yeah.
I think Brian last year did a couple where he did multiple games.
Yeah.
And then they do the editing, they upload it. Like, so it's a whole team effort. And then he mentioned the scores, and then you have me sitting at my desk. And I mean, it's an important job, but I get to do it in the cushiony comfort of my desk where I'm finding scores, I'm scouring
You're texting
websites.
all of us, what is the final score?
Yeah, what's the final? Do you have a connection to this small team that doesn't have a Twitter presence or isn't on Max Preps or something?
Yeah.
Those ones, they frustrate me, but I'm like at true heart of completionist. So if I can't get every score for the ticker at the bottom of the screen, I have failed. But I always feel bad because the pizza comes in and I am the first person to have it. And I feel like I didn't earn it as much as you guys did.
I literally feel like I got pizza maybe 4 weeks last year out of the entire time, just because I'm always so far away for game of the week, and I'm there at 3 o'clock because I go live in the 4, the 5, the 6, and then I'm in the 7, and then I'm in the 11, usually live out in the field.
Well, maybe with the new realignment, you'll be able to get some more games here for game of the weeks.
That's the hope. I think I was in Horry County maybe 4 times last year.
Well, we'll see.
Crazy.
But that is extra point. Pizza and football. You never mentioned Tegan.
Yeah?
This is getting so derailed so quickly. What was your favorite part of extra point? Because
that
last year was
the
your first
question.
year, right?
Yes, last year was my very first year. I literally started in June, like in this job, and then obviously football season kicks off, some sprinklings in July of things, and then August. But honestly, I think my favorite part is just meeting everybody at the games week after week, because as you keep going and as you get involved in this high school football community, people tend to get to know you and they want to talk to you about their kids and about their teams, and it's just so great week after week, especially when I get to go back to some of the same schools for game of the week, just hearing from them about what it means to them to see their kid on TV, see all these highlights, and just hear us talking all about what's going on in high school football. So I just love the people.
That's a good answer. Pizza and people. Honestly, you can't get any better than that. But that's also kind of like what the podcast we were kind of looking at doing too, is talking to those, or like being able to tell more of those stories at an expanse, because Extra Point is only 15 minutes long. And sometimes you guys come back with some amazing plays of the week, some amazing like personal stories. Like you get to you meet these people, and so that's hopefully something that we can kind of expand to as we go through the season and meet those people. But now that we've gotten to the high school part, we could get to the college part. The preseason, I feel so bad every time I say preseason poll. I look at Ian, because I was at episode 2, we talked about like preseason polls are only good for podcasting and for people on TV. Like
For drama.
For drama.
Create the drama.
It's for the drama. But we have a preseason poll, AP's top 25, 2 Carolina schools in the top 25. Clemson coming in at 14 and NC State coming in at 24. 2 like really interesting. So I mean, obviously we're looking at NC State being here in Myrtle Beach because you got Grace McCall. And it'll be interesting kind of to see how he leads that team going into this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way he's been talking ahead of the season and just this leadership role that he's kind of taken on there, it'll be, I mean, really interesting to watch, because you see these fifth-year quarterbacks that spent all 4 years in another school, made themselves an integral part of that program. And honestly, I mean, Grayson McCall brought national attention to Coastal. People didn't know who the Chanticleers were before that, 10-1 season, 2020, right? Yeah, there were people that didn't know who they were before that. So I don't know if Grayson McCall is necessarily going to have that kind of impact at NC State, but I think he's got the hype around him to maybe make people think that he will, if that makes sense. But this is a player who hasn't played since the middle of last season. He got injured against Ark State, and I mean, speaking of preseason polls, he was literally ranked 53 last year in the top 100 college players ahead of the season, and he's not anywhere on that list this year. So I don't know if maybe ESPN temporarily forgot about him and kind of everything he did last year before he was injured, but I think that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, injuries, that's it. Injuries.
Yep.
he had his great coming out party, but then that second season, on and off injuries. Then last year, basically half the season, and I mean, I do believe he wanted to be out there. There's some that just kind of sit out because they want to go to the next level. There was talks as he's sitting out and saving himself for the draft, but I mean, if he can go out there, I mean, he's a competitor, and we wish him nothing but the best. But we'll see, how do the legs hold up, and if he can stay healthy, he's got talent around him. So, NC State, I think they were a top 10 team by the end of last season. So, and they'll play Clemson. So Clemson's one of those teams. They got a rough start to the season. They start out against number 1 Georgia. Yep. Then they'll play App State, who you put an honorable mention.
Yeah.
I guess they're ranked 39th. I mean, but App State, I mean, they've built a program. They're someone that you can't take lightly, and I think NC State's up there too. So, I mean, you could be looking at a 0-3 start if you're Clemson, and I think there's no one else right now in the country who's on a hotter seat than Dabo. Yep. And unfortunately, his own success was probably the reasoning behind that. I mean, here he is bringing multiple national championships to a school that basically was just the stepchild to South Carolina for a long time. But
That's
then
a good way to describe it.
They were, no one. It seemed like if you looked around South Carolina, it was mostly Gamecock fans, and now it seems pretty 50-50. All the closeted, Clemson fans finally came out, and they were like, "I can actually wear my orange with pride.
Yeah.
I can throw the maroon aside and actually be a proud Tiger fan." And so now you're at that point where Clemson, they're being like, "Well, how come?" Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama, how come they're able to have this continued success? And I think it goes back to Dabo. I mean, Dabo just is not accepting of the transfer portal. He's trying to do it the way that he's been doing it before. And, I think those coaches that are stuck in their ways, sometimes it bites you in the butt. I mean, it's the, what's the old saying, adapt, survive, and adapt, find ways to evolve. And so we'll see. I mean, and those Clemson fans, they were gifted with some pretty good years, going back to Trevor Lawrence, going back to Deshaun Watson. And so they had a good run. And, is the run over? Is the window closed, as they say? We'll see. Again, they always have talent, but just because you start at 14, you can be out of the top 25
Very quick.
real quick.
Yeah, well, and we kind of talked about this on one of a previous episode about the struggle that some teams are finding with the transfer portal and with
NIL?
NIL, thank you. Because keeping people seems to be a struggle, or signing people seems to be a struggle because
It's free agency, pretty much. I mean,
It's
and you can't use it as an excuse. The NFL does it. The NBA does it.
Yeah.
All the sports teams have done it. So I mean, pony up. All these schools have billions and billions of dollars. So I don't want to sit here and hear all these schools, "Well, I can't keep my player." It's like, well, you have these boosters that give millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars for facilities that sit empty.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually, that's valid.
They
right.
sit empty 11 out of the 12 months,
Yeah.
or 10 out of 12 months. So
I was feeling bad for a second, and now I don't. You're right.
yeah,
I mean,
you got to
you're
put it
right.
out there.
I feel like the South Carolina schools are doing what they can in terms of trying to just continually keep pushing NIL. I mean, even the smallest of the big three, Coastal, they just hired an NIL general manager to hopefully make sure that they can keep kids like Grayson McCall for the 4 years they did. I was shocked that they were able to keep Grayson for 4 out of 5 years of his eligibility. You don't see that anymore. Think of the last player who stayed at a college for the entirety of their eligibility. I can think of one, and it was Eric Dungy at Syracuse 5 years ago.
Of course, it was Syracuse. I'm kidding. Okay, but now thinking future after this year, where do you see Grayson McCall?
Oh, he'll be in the NFL.
Yeah. I don't see him as a starter. I see him as somebody who sits on the bench for 2 years and then all of a sudden the starter gets injured and maybe he's the second string and gets put in. Yeah. I see him getting paid a lot of money to sit on a bench for a while. Gotta be honest.
It's not the end of the world for some of those.
It's not a bad thing.
No. I mean, if you look at my 49ers who can't keep a QB to save their lives, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere have Brock Purdy come in and take us to the Super Bowl. I mean...
Or I mean, you have a poor situation like J.J. McCarthy, who just got put on the Vikings, but now he's out for the entirety of the season before he even got to see an inch of the field because torn meniscus, maybe, I think, yeah.
I think that's always so depressing before the season starts and you're like, oh, out for the remainder of the season. The remainder, it hasn't started.
Yeah.
So it's a good year. Take some time, learn. You know, they throw these quarterbacks out there so quick, and you know, Nick Saban was on the first episode of Hard Knocks, which was really interesting, and he just talked about the pressure that, you know, these coaches put on these quarterbacks, and it's also because there's pressure on these coaches. You know, it's a win now mentality for a lot of these organizations, and they don't give the time to develop these quarterbacks. And you know, you look at someone like Jameis Winston. You know, he's been on 4 different teams, give or take, since getting drafted by Tampa. You know, he got pushed out of Tampa, and then he kind of found his footing in, you know, New Orleans and won a few games, and now he's kind of found a new role. He knows he's not maybe necessarily going to be a starter, but he can be a contributor, and now he's in Cleveland backing up, you know, Deshaun Watson, and you know, just out there accepting of his role. And there's nothing wrong with being, you know, a backup. I mean, you saw what happened with, you know, Nick Foles. He was that guy, and he got his number called at the right time, wins a Super Bowl, and, you know, he just retired this past week or so. And, you know, is he going to be in the Hall of Fame? No, but he's got a Super Bowl ring, and he's going to be known for an iconic play. Yeah, everyone was backup at one point.
Well, and that's the thing, too. It's like, and this is, I hope no one takes my strategy now. My fantasy football strategy.
Oh,
I can't.
Fantasy, okay.
We'll get a whole episode of fantasy in a second, like coming up. But I can't, in good conscience, draft someone to my team that's like a first string quarterback because I feel like I'm a jinx. My gut is like maybe it's just because I think one year it was Jimmy G, and then he went out with an injury 3 games after I drafted him, and I'm like, well, that's just bad luck. And then I'd pick up another starter, and he goes down. So now I go into it with only drafting backups.
Interesting.
That explains your record.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I did bad last year, didn't I? Did I?
When you have a backup QB and you're trying to get points.
Well, I mean, it worked. Because what was it? I had Daniel Jones in my first year, and he put up points for me. I don't care what anybody says.
Last year?
No, not last year. Because
because
you know why?
Because
then I drafted him again this past year, and it sucked. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing that again. But the first year was like a beginner's luck kind of thing.
Did you actually draft this team?
Yes, I did. Unlike my baseball fantasy draft, I actually picked this team. I remember last year when we had to draft for our WMBF fantasy.
You're gonna be part of that this year.
Yeah, you get to be a part of it this year. I was down at Merle's Inlet at the Marsh Walk, and people were like, Allison, like, why aren't you socializing? I was like, guys, I'm on the clock. I have to pick. And like, of course, I think you might have come before me or someone else came before me. And every time, because obviously it goes down and then back out like snake, whatever. Every time that person had come before me, they picked the player that was next on my queue. So I couldn't even just rely on my queue because it was empty by the time it came to me.
Yeah, gotta have a plan B.
You got it. And
I had to have a plan C through Z at that point.
That's how it is. Gotta watch. Go back and watch the Giants preseason of Hard Knocks. That's a good one.
Okay.
There's always a backup plan. You gotta have all these different scenarios. There's no off season, like I said.
It was interesting, and you know what?
Who would you take number 1 right now? If you were on the clock and no one else was in front of you, so you can't whine and complain that someone took your player. Who are you going to take right now?
You have your choice of anybody.
Like if I'm talking QBs?
No. Overall number 1
anybody.
pick.
Oh, okay, but just for like the purpose of like knowing it's good points, I'd have to take Travis Kelce.
Interesting. Okay.
And
I'm not
then,
going to
like,
argue it.
what?
I mean, I'm not
Who
going
would
to
you
argue
take?
that.
Because, like, realistically, like, if I'm being honest, like, those are the points that I'm, like, I know those are going to give me good points. Like, he's always going to be, like, he had a great season. I would take Brock Purdy as my QB, and then I know he would go down with injury, and then I'd have to take whoever else San Fran's backup is, because I'm still committed to San Francisco, even though they let me down.
I have to fight that strategy of like the team I like taking somebody from it. Like every year I'm like Josh Allen, and I'm like, no, because he's gonna throw an interception, and then I'm gonna get mad, and then he's
Josh
gonna throw
Allen put up
another
mad
interception.
points last year.
It's like, I love Josh Allen. I could go off about that. That's a whole other podcast episode.
How did you rank last year?
I was middle of the pack.
Yeah, okay.
I got
Valid.
plagued by injuries. It's like every time I try to get back into it. I got a good trade for Jonathan Taylor towards the end of the season,
Did
right?
I trade you?
No, I think I traded with Matt Bullock. And I finally had gotten Jonathan Taylor heading right into the playoffs. And he had just gotten back, and he played one game for me, did really good. Next week he was out, which was the start of the playoffs. And
Couldn't
at
come
that
It all
point,
goes
it was
downhill
just
from there.
It was tough. I think last season we did see a lot of injuries, though, and so it was hard, especially with a league like ours. There's just not that many players to choose from after that.
Yeah, I had a
And-
pretty wild trade because I think I had picked up Josh Dobbs after Cousins got hurt, and he had some really good games. I was able to trade him while his stock was high because the second I traded him and got Jonathan Taylor, Dobbs went right down into the stinker. But yeah, it's been interesting. We'll have to do a full podcast on WMBF's.
Maybe we'll bring in the
fantasy 'cause-
commissioner. Our commissioner
Who is it Andrew?
Yeah,
okay.
meteorologist Andrew Dockery, for anyone who's familiar. He let me in. I was actually like really shocked. Although when I came in 2 years ago, we had lost a bunch of people at WMBF. Well, like it kind of, things rotate.
a cycle.
So there was more space. And so he'd asked me if I wanted to, because I mentioned that I like sports. And I was like, yeah, of course. It was actually my first season ever in fantasy. So I was still really new. I like Googled, like, okay, like what's the strategy or whatever. And that year, I think I want to say I came in like top 5.
Oh, wow.
Like I did really well that year. I lost, but I came in top 5.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that I'd have to Google what that strategy was. I don't know what it was, but it worked for me. Who won that year? I don't remember. Who won last year?
I think Patrick won last year, but it's always interesting
He
because
doesn't even go here.
there's so
Who's
many
Patrick?
there's so many
Oh.
teams. Typically I say fantasy you want to keep it around 10 teams because that way you can still use the waiver wire and pick up free agents and stuff. Usually by the end of the draft, when you got 16 plus teams,
Yeah.
it's rough, and the only way to survive is through trades, and there's some competitive blood within. I mean, I've paid into leagues where I'm paying upwards of $50, $60 to $100.
I'm in a league where I
play.
pay 50, yeah.
This one's
Dave?
$10, and it's more
Yeah.
competitive than
I know.
anything else.
I think Dave, he's in like multiple leagues. Like it's kind of like his March Madness
Well, have
thing
you
where he
seen
had
how
like
many?
25.
Yeah, I was gonna say he does so many March Madness trees. I'm
Yeah.
like looking at his desk and he has them everywhere. I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah. Not to call out my husband, and I feel really bad. He is not a sports guy, and you know this. You've met Elijah, but
met him a couple
you
times, yeah.
know him. And so we're in a league with our friends, and the first year that he drafted with us, he drafted a defense special teams first. And so people were like, what are you doing? And then for second, he drafted a kicker.
Hey, work backwards. That's fine.
And
Sure,
but
why
like
not?
obviously like everyone has these plans, right? So he ended up getting like I can't remember who it was now. It was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. No, 2 years ago. But he ended up getting the most wanted kicker, which I mean that doesn't say much because they're a kicker. They're pretty
About 10 points.
9
take,
points, give
yeah.
or take.
Yeah.
And then a defense.
Defense, you always got to switch it up. You just make sure whoever's playing the worst team in the league
See?
in terms of offense, that's who you switch it to.
That would be a good strategy, except this is where I commit myself to the 49ers. Don't do this, okay? And I know Kyle's over there listening too, and he's in the league too, but don't do this. I want 49ers this year. Somebody stole them from me last year. And
I'm
I want
putting an all-out
just want
ban
the
on
defense?
anybody
That's
else
all you
taking
That's
want?
it. That's all I want. What? It's not like I think that they're going to be so good or always put up good points or whatever. I think it's like my good luck charm to have them on my team.
This is why you lose. If you're thinking this much and you're putting this much heart into a defense, there's some teams that don't even play with a defense.
That's true. There are years I won't play with a defense.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, there's obviously, because usually when I only have one, I'll put them on a bye and then they just stay there. And there's like a couple weeks where I completely forget to look at my roster, or while I'm drafting, I fail to look at when their bye weeks are, and I'm halfway through the draft, and all of a sudden everyone has a bye week 8, and I'm like, oh, I actually have no idea. I made that number up, but you know what I'm talking about. Everyone has like a bye week at the same time, and I'm like, oh, well, that was a mistake, and I can't get out of it unless I trade a good player to somebody, because no one wants to give, like you said, like that's the only way to survive in our league, because I can't just
by week. You just gotta take it 1 week at a time.
I know,
Start
but we
planning
will.
now. Start planning.
After this episode, I will be at my desk planning my strategy. But we will. We'll have a whole episode about the draft of WMBF's fantasy league here. This is the last preseason poll I'm going to mention, and I promise, at least for this episode, we're heading into volleyball season coming up, and Jalen Stout made the preseason offensive. Oh, I said preseason poll, but this is the last preseason mention in
preseason
general.
awards.
Jalen Stout was named Sunbelt's preseason offensive player of the year, which doesn't surprise me because she was named the freshman of the year last year, which also confuses me then, because why are we doing this extra award when, like, obviously she was the best last year.
Just sports gives you something to talk about.
To hype
during the
everything
off-season.
up, yeah, exactly. And
Get you hyped for the regular season.
Yeah, I think I'll throw in another last preseason poll in here. But I mean, Coastal was in the preseason poll. They're predicted to finish second in the Sun Belt below James Madison. So
Right. Yes. Absolutely. And with like Stout, she played 32 games last year, 365 kills.
yeah,
That's one a day. If you're doing it like that.
a volleyball kill a day keeps the doctors away.
Yes. And then over 500 assists and 300 digs, which those are impressive numbers. And as a freshman,
She's a beast.
so it's only going to go up from there, and that's impressive. That's one of the things, I think I mentioned this too in other episodes. Volleyball is one of those sports that I really love to watch. And talking about like the Olympics last couple weeks, that was one of the sports that watching beach volleyball and indoor volleyball, a little throw out to Canada here. Canada placed silver for beach volleyball. I mean, sure, they lost to Brazil, but I'm half Brazilian, so I was happy anyways. But yeah, like that's one of those sports that I feel like doesn't get enough media attention for how interesting it is. It's fast-paced, it's relatively quick, and there's a lot of action. Like, there's a lot going on. So that's one of those things. One of those sports that I'll be watching for CCU and watching Stout this year. So
They're fun to watch, both the beach volleyball team and the indoor volleyball team. I went to a bunch of their games last year.
that's sweet. But
I think they need to shift the numbers. With beach volleyball, I think you need like one more person out there. And then when it comes to indoor, I feel like there's just so many people on the court.
yeah,
You know?
That's
it's
fair.
like there's just back and forth. Megan, she enjoys watching indoor volleyball. It's one of the few sports she does enjoy watching. And I was just like, there's just so many people involved with indoor. And then, like I said, then you go to beach volleyball and it's just two people. And, you know, beach volleyball, it seems like set, spike. It's just kind of back. It's like if you had that extra person, like a third person in there, I feel that would make beach volleyball even more interesting, because I think beach volleyball is a lot of fun to watch.
Way more
And I think
rallies.
with indoor volleyball, you know, the higher up you get, whether it's through, you know, middle school to high school to the nationals, whatever
Yeah.
it is, it's like maybe decrease the number of people on the floor, because there's just
Still just
so
one.
many. Because then you got that one that jumps, that's like the fake spiker. And then the real person who's coming up to spike comes out of nowhere, and you're like, wait, where the heck did? Yeah, it's too much
the
going
air that some of them get, like the outside hitters get,
wild.
is insane. And like they did like a miles per hour speed gun.
Yeah.
A miles per hour
Speedometer?
on. Pew, pew.
For volleyball, and like some of those spikes were hitting like 100. I think it might have been kilometers.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, that's like universal everywhere else.
Except America, because
And
we do our
some
own
place in
thing.
Africa, I forget. But anyways,
Interesting.
but some of those spikes terrify me.
Yeah.
I agree with you on the 2 thing though. But on the flip side, it makes for such interesting replays or like such interesting highlights because you have the two players, right? And then all of a sudden you have like a stray bump and you have someone running to go get it and now they're in the sand, but they've hit it and they haven't served it over, and then all of a sudden the person in the sand's getting up, running, smacking it, it gets blocked, whoa! And it's just, I feel like because there's so much more movement. That's how I commentate.
Exactly.
I think it's just like that is so interesting because you only have the two players that have to divide the court, and I guess the third would just stay back. Like,
yeah, there are different types of sports because I feel like there's ones that you look better on TV, and then there's ones that are more fun to watch in person.
That's how I feel about baseball.
I think indoor
it's more fun in person.
volleyball, I think, is one you want to watch in person.
Yeah.
Versus having that uptight camera and it's hard to see everything. But
yeah, that's valid. No, I would agree with that. And with you saying basketball or baseball being an in-person sport also has to do with the environment.
Yeah.
There's nothing that beats, and like this is coming from a Canadian girl who loves hockey. There is nothing that beats the environment of like a summer baseball game, hot dog, cold beer, maybe the little cup bucket hat thingy,
of ice cream. Yeah, the t-shirt cannons,
But if the humidity is too much for you and you'd rather catch a game on TV, WMBF, we are now partnering up with the Pelicans, and we already aired our first game on Bounce, which is channel 32.2. If you don't know how that works, you just keep on clicking and you'll see the point 1, point 2, point 3. So
Dave didn't actually know that you could do the points on the remotes.
Yeah.
So some remotes just have the
little,
point that come with
the
it.
little
or
dot.
A dash.
Yeah,
some
a dash or a
dashes.
dot. So first game already aired, but they'll be doing another one on August 30th. So kind of getting into the whole live sports action, which is cool. And then our parent company, Gray Media, they announced that they're going to be launching the Palmetto Sports and Entertainment channel. Also going to be kind of a digital platform, but they'll also be on channel 32.3. But they're looking to kind of launch an app as well that you can download on your smart TV. They'll have access to a bunch of old Clemson, Carolina games that they'll be able to put out there. But they're wanting to put out some original content as well. This could be, we talked, this podcast show that we're kind of doing could be something that they could utilize on that. So kind of cool seeing the local media being able to get back in and give people access to different
state, like South Carolina sports, all sorts.
People want to watch sports, and not everyone can get out, and especially in the middle of summer, August, when it's tough to find something to watch, turn on a Pelicans game, and they're fun to watch. So
yeah, they are. Those are one of the few that so I watched the game here because I was working, and that's handy because I don't get to go to Pelicans games very often because it conflicts with my work schedule. Yeah. So being able to turn the TV on and watch it was great.
Yeah, big names come out of Myrtle Beach. Jason Hayward was someone who was a big name with the Atlanta Braves for a while, and he's bounced around the league, but got his start, and that's always kind of one of my favorite things at the Pelicans games is they have a wall of all the players that have gone on to the big leagues that, whether it's one game or whatever, your name gets put up on the wall of, what team you debuted with. But, at one point or another, you had the Pelicans logo, on your arm, which was cool. So, yeah, definitely cool.
Pelicans games in person, too, are also amazing. I really love, WMBF sponsors a couple events, or like a couple of the days of the week where there's like certain discounts and stuff. I think, is it tacos on Tuesday? It's one of those things they sponsor.
We've done a couple of events with them.
They just do so much that like you could, it's still like, I feel it with like nowadays, things are kind of getting away from us that they're not so affordable. You can't do things with the whole family anymore because it's so expensive. Pelicans games aren't like that. I feel like you could, if you're somebody like us who likes to drink beers are cheap at some games, and
it's just fun to get out and
getting out and doing that. That's
season's wrapping up, crazy, especially as the summer season wraps up, and
I get not depressed, but I get sad because it's like one of those things where it's like the season ends.
Football.
That's fair. But we were talking about volleyball, we were talking about Olympics, and I must say, last episode, remember how we were talking about Melissa Jefferson? And I said, hey, do you think if she wins, they would like do a Vanna White special. How in North Myrtle Beach it says, "Welcome to North Myrtle Beach, home of Vanna White."
Yeah.
Now, are they going to go, "Welcome to Georgetown, home of gold medalist Melissa Jefferson"?
So it's interesting because I was out there last week on her final race day, the 4x100 relay, and so she's from Georgetown County.
Yes.
But even more so, she's from this really small town. I drove in there, it's small, called Dunbar. And so there's a sign that says, "Welcome to Dunbar," and underneath it says "Home of Melissa Jefferson," and there's a giant picture of her.
I did see that, and as soon as I saw that, I thought, save this mentally to talk about on the podcast. Because now it literally,
cool.
They'll have to make a new one though, because it does say "Welcome to Dunbar," and then they have this picture and it says "Home of Melissa Jefferson."
Yep.
Now it'll have to say "Home of Olympic gold medalist Melissa Jefferson."
2-time Olympic medalist.
Yes, because bronze in her own 100-meter.
Yep, and then bronze in the relay.
Gold in the relay.
Gold in the relay. You're right. What am I
excuse
saying?
me.
Excuse me. She is a gold medalist.
But that was awesome. And like you were saying, so you were in Dunbar, you were with some of the family, you got to be there for the celebration.
Yeah, so funny story. So I get to Dunbar. I know that I'm doing a story on Melissa Jefferson's race this day, but honestly, I was just expecting to maybe talk to some folks in her hometown who, might know her family or whatever. And I pull over on the side of the road right by that Dunbar sign. And I'm looking around trying to figure out which direction to go. And this white truck just kind of drives by, slows down to be like, why is there a news car? And I'm like, hey, any chance you know where Melissa Jefferson's family lives? Like literally, I just asked this dude in the truck. And he's like, yeah, get in your car, follow me. And I'm like,
I thought he was gonna say get in my car. I'm like, that's interesting, but okay.
But no, so I get in my car and I follow him. He's like, I'll bring you to her aunt's and I'll introduce you. And he does. We drive down the road like literally 2 minutes. This is a tiny town. And we get out, he goes up, knocks on the door and is like, I've got a news lady here that wants to talk to you. And then her aunt was the one that I ended up meeting at the door, just tells me to come on in, watch the race with them. And it was her cousin, her nephew, her, I think her sister, just a whole bunch of people that were just there to watch her and cheer very, very loudly when she won.
Very cool.
Yeah, and we actually have that video, so we're gonna take a look at that real quick, of the family watching her win. This was for her bronze medal?
No, this was for the relay, the gold medal. So they're watching Team USA right here.
And she wasn't the only one to win gold either. Asia Wilson bringing home or leading Team USA's basketball team to the 8th straight Olympic gold medal for women's.
And I think she had 20 points, 20 or 21, and that was like way more compared to her other teammates because Brianna Stewart had the second most. Syracuse native, by the way, went to my high school.
Went to UConn.
But she had 8 points, so like that was the next most. So, but Asia Wilson was on fire, South Carolina alum.
Yeah. So they brought in gold.
This is basketball, by the way. Yeah.
I mentioned it a couple times.
I was like, wait,
if you don't know, if you're from
from
South Carolina and you don't know Asia Wilson,
facts.
No, I'm kidding. But yes, we mentioned basketball, and then if we mention, so the Olympics wrapped up. Team USA brought home not only the most medals, but the most gold medals. I mean, the most medals by quite a lot.
We tied with China for gold medals.
Yes.
40.
But it's still the top of the list. But, fun fact, if U.S. women were their own country, they would have placed 3rd for the Olympics.
Dang.
That's if you didn't take away those medals from USA's total, because if you took away from USA's total, they would have placed 2nd.
Oh, wow.
So we had, I mean, I think this was talked about before the Olympics ruled out. It was a 50-50 representation for the for women and men. So to see like the women pull out, it was 26 golds, 23 silvers, and 18 bronzes. Bronzes? Bronze.
Bronze?
Bronzies.
Multiple.
Multiple bronze. So I think that's super impressive. But
yeah,
as we're talking about the women representing Team USA, you had like obviously the big ones you're watching, including Simone Biles, who was breaking records when we talked about her last episode. But one of her gymnastic teammates, Jordan Childs, she had originally, this was actually a little bit like, I'm not a huge, obviously when it's not Olympics, I'm not a huge gymnastics watcher. And so she had performed her floor routine, I believe it was. I want to say it was the
there
floor
are so
routine.
many events in
I know, it was the floor
gymnastics.
routine, and she had placed 5th.
Yes.
Behind, I don't know who was in 4th, I can't remember, but and then 3rd would have been one of the Romanian gymnasts. And something happened. I mean, you could have you catch us on like Peacock or NBC if you go back and watch it.
Yeah, she thought that she was underscored, so then they put in an appeal to be rescored, and then she did get rescored, which ended up putting her in 3rd, and that was like how it ended. She was on the podium, but then after the fact, the whatever that big old sports organization is or whatever.
It was the Court of Arbitration for Sports.
The fancy people that they are. They said, actually, Jordan and Team USA did not turn in this appeal within the 1 minute mark that they were supposed to.
But 4 seconds late.
Right, but then Team USA was like, but wait, we have video evidence that we did that is irrefutable that you will not be able to deny. So they turn in that evidence. And then the fancy people are once again like, no, that's wrong. That's not proof.
This is like gymnastics for dummies. If anyone's listening, you're like, this is how to simplify.
So then, yeah, and now we're at the point where Team USA is like, well, we're going to fight this legally, but this is like a years-long legal battle. So,
My big thing is, I've seen, like, there's a video that goes around every time the Olympics comes around where it was the 2 high jumper, pole vaulters maybe?
this is from the past?
Yes, from the past.
Oh.
2 pole vaulters, one of them's from Qatar, I believe, and I can't remember where Italy maybe? They were jumping consecutively, reaching the
I know
same,
what you're talking about.
I know,
Yes,
it
okay,
makes me
wait,
cry
yes.
every time. They were jumping repetitively, and then eventually they'd gone up to the judges and like, well, what's the next step? Because they kept matching each other. And the guy who I guess technically would have been in the lead for some reason had said like, can you do 2 golds? And then he looked at the other guy, he goes, do you want a gold? I want a gold. Something along those lines. And the judge goes, yeah. And then they celebrate, and I cry. They celebrate the 2 gold medals. So tell me why you can't, at this point, acknowledge that the judges messed up by either allowing the points to be scored or to be rescored or
her being underscored in the first place.
Yeah, her being underscored in the first place.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that you guys messed up and then just give both of them bronze. Because realistically, how depressing must it be? I mean, granted, she has a gold medal for the team, but like, how depressing must it be to have, like, wins bronze and then have to give it back? What happens if you don't give it back? Do you go to jail?
I mean, is it Flavor
fine.
Flav? What's the guy's? I don't know.
Flavor
I don't know.
Flav.
Sir?
I don't know the
Flavor
pop culture.
Flav.
Excuse me. But anyways, he made her like I don't know. He made her like.
A what?
Did you see that?
A what? What did he make her?
A
What is he
bronze-
known for?
I don't know. I don't know who this man
Would you like to take
is.
this one?
I'm guessing it's a clock.
Yes, he's known for wearing the big clocks, guys.
Why is this guy famous? I didn't understand. Like I saw his.
Never seen Flavor of Love?
No, I don't
Because
know
he
what
was
that
able to do
is.
it without TikTok.
Yes.
That's why he's famous.
Yes.
He was able
why
to
I
do
don't
it
know him.
without
He had a
social
show,
media.
and I believe it was on MTV, called Flavor of Love. It was like The Bachelor, before The Bachelor. But a little-
It's just your good old-fashioned trash television.
Yeah, it was like around the same time of Raiders and Cribs. Oh, it was peak television.
This was before you were born, don't worry.
And then he sponsored the
know any of this
women's
is.
water polo team, and him along with Snoop Dogg were like anchors
Yeah, I
to the
saw them
Olympic
being
coverage.
like iconic and stuff. But yeah, I saw he made her a nice little bronze clock, but like, that's not a bronze medal.
I mean, but that's unique. No
It
one
is.
else will ever have it.
That's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're going to turn a lot of people off for your sport. So, I think a lot of these sports that have an old regime of, this is the way it is, proper and snooty, I mean, that's your fault. You're going to lose
Yeah.
viewership. You're going to be like, well, why? What's the point, I look back at the NFL. there was that time where the actual refs were on strike and they had the replacement refs, or they came in, and it's called the Fail Mary. I think it was between the Green Bay Packers and I think it was the Seahawks, and one of them threw up a Hail Mary pass, and you literally have two refs saying touchdown, one saying no, but I think they ended up counting it as a catch, and it wasn't a catch. But at the end of the day, officials make mistakes. You don't go back and replay. I mean, the Saints had an issue a few years ago in the playoffs, and it cost them the game. You don't go back and replay the game. To me, the score was set. It is what it is. Now, if they had realized what they had done within that same, BS time frame that they're saying, oh, well, you didn't turn in your time within the 4 seconds. Well, you guys took almost a week to reverse this.
Yeah.
So, I think it is what it is, whatever,
Well, you have all that coverage, or all those people there, like, at the time. How is it not, like, was it more important to rush through to get somebody on the podium? Like, what I'm talking about?
Well, I mean, I think even if, if it was the other way around, if it was another country who was, gotten bronze and, Jordan was fourth, and now she's moving. I mean, I would feel like, well, that I didn't earn it. It's like, okay, so what, technicalities? It's like, so at this day and age, there needs to be quick, give me the points for a reason. I think that's why I don't like gymnastics. It's fun to watch. I appreciate everything that they do, and what they're able to do is phenomenal. I don't understand the scoring for jack crap. I can't understand it. It makes no sense to me. Even when the officials try to explain it to me, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
All the color commentators sound depressed in everything that they do.
Can
you watch?
Time,
it's so hard. Like, have you ever seen a gymnastics coach say, "Oh my God, that was no"? It's that's not good. That's
she's
not. She's never done that.
This
Not
is
good.
the worst thing ever.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so annoying.
I'll say one of those things with the Olympics is, like, when they do scoring that isn't like it's like very nitpicky, like within points, and they don't explain to you, like, you can see, like, it says, difficulty, routine, penalty, or whatever. That makes sense, but then they don't really kind of explain why or how it happened.
Who's judging the difficulty? Is it
Yes.
based on, there's no, like, to me, it's like the NBA dunk contest. You have 10 different retired basketball players, most of which are hungover by that time or drunk, and everyone sees what should be a 10, and you got one of the old farts on the end hanging a 7. It's like, a 6 or a 7. It's like, okay, does this guy even know what number he's holding up at this point? Or so it's just the scoring. It's like, either make it straight across, make it computerized. I mean, we live in a world of, so I mean, it sucks for her. I think they'll fight it, or whatever comes out of it. It's going to be the organization who decided to appeal and just say, oh, this was wrong. They're going to be the ones that end up looking bad. And, if anything, it sets up the Jordan Child's revenge tour. So hopefully in 2028 she's on home soil and kicks some butt and gives them
the downside then to that, though, is, like, now bronze is tarnished forever. Like, nobody,
everything's tarnished. Have you seen pictures of these Olympics?
I was going to say, is that a pun? Like,
tarnished.
So, they're replacing the ones that are tarnished.
Yeah, they look really
Nigel
bad.
Houston, skateboarder for US, he showed his, and it looked terrible.
Well, they do oxidize when they are exposed
that
to
quickly,
water.
though?
Yeah. Well, I think I saw something too, like several years ago, the gold medal actually used to be 100% gold.
Yes,
and
I saw that.
Now the gold medals are actually like 1%. It's like gold plated. So that just kind of, I mean, I guess you can't hand out gold, like you used to be.
It's the Olympics.
Yeah.
So,
Dang. But now that the Olympics are over, it's not the end. The Paralympics are starting. Woo! They start August 28th, and they run through the 8th of September. But that kind of leads us into our next segment of the Palmetto Playbook Athlete of the Week, or Athlete of the Episode. We're talking about a South Carolinian. She's from Aiken, South Carolina. Her name's Ellen Geddes. She's 36 years old, and she's a second-time Paralympian. She is a Paralympian in wheelchair fencing. I had to look this up because, I mean, obviously I know what fencing is. I actually didn't watch any of the fencing during the Olympics, but, we got a local player now. I feel like I have to watch the wheelchair fencing Paralympics. She used to be a former competitive equestrian.
Really?
So yeah, this was super interesting. I looked it up. So she actually is still very, very involved in like the equestrian scene. But unfortunately, in 2011, she got into a car accident and like had a severe spinal cord injury that led her to while she was rehabbing, meeting somebody on the Paralympic fencing team while she was in Georgia. And she says that like that was what inspired her to go essentially, because like realistically I had looked at it, I was like, how do you go from being an equestrian to fencing? Like where is the jump? And he is the jump. Dennis Aspey is his name. And he inspired her to join. She competed in Tokyo in 2020. And now she'll compete this year, 2024, in Paris.
Very cool.
That is so cool.
Right?
I
And
love
then
that.
she said that her uncle is her role model because he was actually paralyzed at 17 and uses a wheelchair as well.
Awesome.
Wow.
Keep an
So-
eye on that story. Very
Yeah,
cool.
we'll keep
Yeah.
an eye on her. We'll let you know how she performs, and we'll bring you another player of the week next week. But that's it. We did it. We got plenty. We got pizza, we got football, we got people, we got the Olympics. We really covered it all, and we did it all without Dave.
Yeah.
We did.
There you go.
Sorry, Dave.
We'll
Sorry,
bring
Dave.
you- Sorry, Dave.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
You get something in there that might get us copyrighted right at the end.
It's okay. Well, by the next episode, we'll have 2 weeks in of football, so be sure to check out
Yeah.
Extra Point, and by that time, we'll hopefully have 2 weeks of pizza put in, and so we'll let you know throughout the rest
Taste
of the
test.
season how the pizza rankings go.
Yeah.
Don't forget about the sponsor thing we threw out there.
Yeah, the
If
pizza
you're
thing's
listening,
still out there. So.
Well, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you guys next week.
bye.